If you're bleeding, vomiting, dead, please come and see me. If it's not one of those things, or toilet, that's kind of important too. If it's not one of those things, see if you can talk to another student to get the answer first. Welcome to Rainbow Skies for Teachers, the go-to show dedicated to teachers who want to make a big difference in education. Whether you're in your first few years or well into your teaching career, we are here to inspire, support, and empower you with bite-sized tips, simple strategies, and the motivation to lead an education revolution, one classroom at a time.
We're Ashley and Alicia from Rainbow Sky Creations, two Aussie teachers who love all things teaching and learning. We are here to help you thrive as you work toward making an impact in your students' lives while loving your life as a teacher.
We are here to help you bring joy, simplicity, and creativity into your classroom on the daily, because
there are rainbows ahead, my friend, and together we're unstoppable.
Let's get into today's episode.
Rainbow Sky Creations acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we record this podcast on, the Dharawal and Whadjuk Noongar people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
Welcome to episode 68 of Rainbow Skies for Teachers. And look, it is the start of February. Gosh, the year is zooming by, but we know many of our beautiful states and territories here in Australia are heading back to school this week, if not already been at school for the first week. And we know that during this time, you're thinking about in the primary years, reading. You're like, reading groups, or how am I going to teach my reading? So we're here to help you get a little bit organized and take the pressure off yourself when it comes to getting yourself set up for how you plan to run reading groups this year.
Yes. Now, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere and you think, well, we're halfway through the school year, this could be a time to give your reading groups a nice refresh, especially if things haven't been running as smoothly as what you really would like them to. And we know that reading groups can sometimes not be so smooth running, but we're here to help with that.
Absolutely. We're all about helping you work smarter, not harder. And if you listen to our recent episode, number 66, where we chatted about things we wouldn't do, we wouldn't be sweating the small stuff. So don't get yourself bogged down in all the little intricacies of your reading groups. We're going to help you come up with a clear plan to get yourself organized.
Yes, so we've got 6 things that we're going to talk about today to really streamline and organize your reading groups. And the first one is exactly to that point, Alicia, and it is about having our reading groups and setting them up so they are fluid. So what we mean by that is that they can change frequently. By setting your reading groups up like this from the very beginning and letting your students know that they're fluid, you knowing that they're fluid, it takes that pressure off by getting them just right or just perfect the first time around. So give yourself permission to change things up as you go. Allow students to swap and change. Every time you collect a little bit of data, every time you work with a child and you think, okay, they need a little bit of a change here, our group needs to be swapped there, that is okay. We really recommend that going down this idea of your groups are fluid, and we recommend this for any groupings that you have in your classroom, just letting your students know that they're fluid, is having some sort of chart where you display your reading groups, allowing that to be fluid too. In my second year of teaching, I came into the staff room and I was like, oh my gosh, I just came up with the most amazing thing. And my principal was sitting at the table at the time. He was a new principal and he's eating his lunch. And he looked up and he said, oh yeah, he's always a really great listener. And there was a couple of other teachers in the staff room at the same time. I said, I've just discovered my reading groups. I've laminated the chart. So the red group's laminated, the green group's laminated, the blue group's laminated, and I've cut up the students' names and laminated those too. So now I just need to blue tack them on each group, and then I can change them around without always having to reprint every time I change their reading groups. I will never forget my principal's face. He looked up at me and he smiled and he said, Ashley, it's taking you all this time to work that out. I would have thought that you had been all over that from the very beginning, but I wasn't because I'd never seen it. No one had ever told me. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're like, hang on a second, that's genius, you are welcome, because sometimes we just need to get told these little hacks.
That's it. That's it. Or just pull up a teaching slide, find what works for you.
These days with teaching slides, it's so much easier because you can just have them up there and then remove it, and they're not always on display.
This is true. But there's nothing like a good old school display, Ash. Won't deny it.
I do love myself a display. We know that.
The next one is to analyze the data, whatever it might be and how you pronounce it. You're probably going to get some information about the students who are coming into your class if they were already at the school. If it's a new student, woohoo, lucky you, you get to work out where to put them in that beautiful little piece of your reading group puzzle. So use that information to kind of just collectively group students who you feel are working towards like goals. Whether or not you've gone down the science of reading route where you're looking at what their skill sets are and what they're working on, or rather you've still used, decodable readers. I know still some schools use PM levels. So you just find how you wish to group them. And like Ashley was saying, your groups are fluid. Even if you set them like this for the first couple of weeks and then you have to change them, it's cool because the kids know that they may move to other groups. Use the information you have.
We often hear from new teachers saying like, oh, I just don't really know how to group the kids. Like, where do I even start? We'll start with the data that you've collected or someone else has collected or combine the both, but know that you can change it. Like, nothing is set in stone. Nothing is concrete. That is okay. Like, there's not mistakes to be made.
Yeah. And you might start off with, I always used to kind of start with 5 groups, but you might have to start out with a bigger number of groups and maybe plan how you get through those groups in a week or over a fortnight. So just be flexible, be gentle on yourself. You will come up with a solution. Give yourself the time.
Yeah. Okay. The next one, Alicia swears by, and it is really smart, and I would recommend anyone doing it. And that is running your reading groups without a teacher group to begin with. So it might seem counterintuitive by running the activities without a read with a teacher component, but it allows you time to monitor your students. It allows you to set expectations from the year. It allows you to pop up any problems that might come up when the kids are working. It also allows them to practice some of these activities that they may be doing over and over again. So we recommend the first week, maybe even 2 weeks, you run reading groups with just the activities that the students are doing. So they're working with their group, they're doing the activities. You're monitoring, walking around, reminding them of what your expectations are, reminding them of how to do the task. If students need to answer a question, you can answer it and say to them, like, this is what you need to do. However, if I was reading with a reading group, that question you'd need to ask your friend. Or if I was reading with a reading group, you need to go to the toilet, you need to come and hold the red card up, or whatever your system is. But it's a really great way. It's like a dress rehearsal for your reading groups.
Absolutely. I really recommend it. You feel like you're not using your time wisely, but you are setting expectations, you are setting boundaries, and the students will be so better for it that if you ever had to, oh my gosh, take a sick day, you could still run reading groups because the kids know how it works. They'll be teaching the casual teacher how to do it. So run your reading groups definitely for the first week without that directed teacher group so you can get in there and model how a game might be played or how they collect their listening devices for audiobooks, etc.
Would you be doing, Alicia, what's your personal preference? A week of a dress rehearsal or 2 weeks?
It depends on if I had really little ones, I might do 2 weeks, or especially if your school year is starting on a Wednesday, I wouldn't be starting reading groups and then I'll just use that second week. I'll definitely be doing 1 full week. The older the students get, and if you know they're at a school where they've had the same similar setup with previous teachers, you usually don't need as long. But if you find your class is not aware of how this works, they're not used to small group work, then you might want to push it out for 2 weeks and give yourself the grace to do it well.
Yeah. We've had students that have gone through Transform Your Reading Groups. And when I say students, teachers that have gone through our mini course Transform Your Reading Groups, and they've had trouble with their reading groups, and they've done this sort of dress rehearsal style. They've stopped in the middle of the school year, done a week of just the activities, just to refresh and reset those expectations. And they've really raved about it and how much better their students were working in groups.
And do you know what? In all honesty, it gives you a moment to pause. It gives you a moment to not feel like you're on that treadmill, and it allows you to see your kids, your students in a different light, or actually be like, oh, wow, you really are getting into this like independent reading or like this buddy reading. You guys are actually reading, you're talking about the book, you're using the question prompts. It gives you a time to reflect on how your explicit instruction has been going and how much is being followed through with the independent learning. So I'd say, like you said, give it a try. Maybe once a term you do it at the start of the term just to reset those expectations, but to give yourself time to see how they're progressing. It's a really good reflection tool.
Even just to find those activities that they're not engaged in. Sometimes you'll put out those activities and the kids aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing with the cards or the whiteboard markers or whatever. And that's because they either don't know what they're doing or they're not engaged in that activity. And that's a good reminder for you too, a good reflection, exactly as you said.
Yeah, we're all learning. Our next one, number 4, is have a set of go-to activities. This is probably something we are guilty of as teachers, is that we overcomplicate reading group activities, but familiarity is the best. Have a set of activities that are on repeat throughout the term. As students gain independence and confidence, you can mix more of it up. You know there are going to be activities your students love to do. Like, pick, for example, my year 3s were loving silly sentences. Like, they just loved it to the point where they would just be making silly sentences, editing each other's sentences. It was like one of the best parts of their reading groups. I had another bunch of students who really loved creating their own retail book on their tablet, and they would book creator app up and they would be making their own books, retelling the stories or changing up the ending. So don't change things that are doing well. Kids do not mind doing it week after week for like 4 weeks, because as we know, the more you practice it, the better you become. When you're so good at it and you're teaching others it, you are learning it. It's holding in there in that gray matter. So don't be quick to change things.
Yeah, they're learning through repetition, but also it cuts down your explanation time when you're setting up your reading groups on that Monday morning and explaining the activities that they need to do. You're saying to them, okay, silly sentences, that's activity 1. The kids already know what is expected of them. So if you have that set of go-to activities that the kids already know those expectations, they already know exactly what they need to do, and you know that they enjoy them, I feel like you've really hit the trifecta there.
Yeah, absolutely. Find those activities your kids love, and they might change from term to term or semester to semester, and that's cool. And just keep them there as a bank. It will save you time and energy.
It sure will. All right, the next one up is about technology training. So if you're going to include technology into your weekly rotations, run some class training sessions to teach your students exactly what they need to do should any problems arise. So it's just kind of like troubleshooting. What do they do if a device has no battery? What do they do if a computer or an app that they're chosen isn't working? How do they log into the school system efficiently? The time that you dedicate to this in the short term will definitely be worth it in the long run, because technology, although it is great, can be such a time waster, and it can be a real frustration point for teachers when you're trying to sit and read with a group and a child's coming up saying, my iPad isn't charged. You're just saying, yeah, plug it in. It's like when the kids come up to you and say, I found a piece of rubbish. And you say, yes, put it in the bin. We need to train them to be self-sufficient. So if you're including technology, put that self-sufficiency training into practice from the beginning.
And look, in all honesty, you have to have a bit of technology happening for your students become more confident with technology. I'd always pick a few technology experts in my classroom, whether you give them a little sticker or a badge, and you have some kids who just will be the ones willing to help others. They've got the patience for it. They got the teaching gene. They do it. Obviously, there's not a gene. Growth mindset here, Alicia. But you got to give them the chance. And as well, you got to give them the chance to troubleshoot and be like, you got to give this a try. Okay, you got to try turning it off, back on, whatever it might be, and be like, I found that sometimes students, if their device wasn't working and they were having a lot of trouble, I'd go pair up with one of your mates in your groups and do an activity together. And most kids will be like, oh, well, cool. I get to do it with my mate. That's great. So just have some fallbacks, but use that directed teacher time in that first week of the term to just kind of go through it. And every time you're bringing out devices, think of it as I'm repeating and teaching them a skill that I know they're going to need throughout the year to play X number of games, apps, whatever it might be.
Yeah. If technology is not really your thing, reading groups is the perfect time to integrate it into your teaching, because you've only got a small group working on the technology at the one time. And it's a really safe way to start immersing the students in technology in the classroom. Alicia and I, over the years, I've changed my mind about technology. Alicia's got her views. I feel like I was thinking the other day, I was driving in the car and I was thinking about the podcast, and I thought we should have a podcast episode where we have the great technology debate.
I'm up for it. I was just struggling though, thinking about technology. And I think sometimes it's our limitations that prevent us from bringing it out. While I've got my current 2-year-old who'll be like, Mummy, can I have your phone? I want to do emojis. And she will actually show my 4-year-old how to get the emoji option up on my phone while it's still locked. Like, swear, these kids, they know what they're doing. So don't let your limitations and your mindset prevent you from using technology when really it is the way of the future. Like, it's not that scary.
No, it isn't. Let's bring on that debate at some point.
Yes, we should.
Okay. Let us know. Write us a review and let us know if you want to hear it. All right. The next one is a do not disturb routine. So this is an area that needs training, but it is worth the training, like we've been saying with some of these other points as well. Some teachers use a light. Some teachers wear a hat when they're trying to read with a group. I personally like to sit in a particular area of the classroom to let the students know that I'm working with a small group at that time and I can't be disturbed. But explaining to the students when they can't disturb you. If you're bleeding, vomiting, dead, please come and see me. If it's not one of those things, or toilet, that's kind of important too. If it's not one of those things, see if you can talk to another student to get the answer first. We have a gal who used to work for us, Erin. She's a wonderful teacher, and she would always say, if there's a dangerous fire, if there's a spider, if you're sick, if you're bleeding, if someone's delivering me a coffee, or if Bradley Cooper or Ryan Reynolds walks into the classroom, you can come and disturb me. Other than that, no.
That's it. And just having it set up so the kids know. And this one is actually good as a poster to have on display, on the reg. Just as that general reminder of like, there are other tools than just me to get the answer. And this is where you have to use those other tools, except the exceptions.
Yes. Like, who would your person be? Like, Erin loved Bradley Cooper, and I think her teaching partner loved Ryan Reynolds at the time. Who would your person be if they came into the door?
I'd probably say Ryan Reynolds.
Would you?
Yeah.
You're a Ryan Reynolds gal.
I am.
I'm just going to throw this like random one out there, but mine I think might be Ed Sheeran.
Wow, you'd love to be serenaded.
Yeah, I love him. There's just something about him.
Just tell me all the jokes and I'm in. Yeah. Interesting. There you go. You could have done that for the 2 truths and a lie in our last episode, and I would have had no idea.
Well, there you go. Go back and listen to the last episode that we did about, actually, I think it was 2 episodes ago, about icebreakers, classroom icebreakers, and then you'll catch our drift of what we're talking about. Okay, before we go, if you have found these tips about reading groups helpful, we have got a freebie, 8 tips to run your reading groups super efficiently in your classroom. So we'll put the link to that freebie in the show notes. They aren't the things that we've talked about in this episode. They're 8 different ideas to keep your reading groups running super efficiently. This was more about the organization side. The freebie is more about things that you can do to have them running on a day-to-day basis. We also have a mini course. So if you think reading groups is something tricky for me, I've never been able to run them well, or you're brand new to it, or you just need some fresh ideas, our course Transform Your Reading Groups will set you up from the very beginning and help you walk through and get those reading groups set up so that they're so streamlined and they run like clockwork.
Absolutely. And if you've got a teacher friend, they might just be starting, or reading groups has always been on their professional development goal, share this podcast episode with them. Let's give them a little helping hand and get them on the right foot when it comes to organising their reading groups. But thanks so much for listening. We always enjoy having a chat with you today.
Yeah, and we love talking about reading groups. Alicia and I both, although we're very different teachers, we both run our reading groups exactly the same. So that's where we neatened it up and put it in a beautiful little bow with our mini course, Transform Your Reading Groups, because we both have found that running our reading groups this way is just the best, most efficient, most calm way to do it. Because let's get honest, sometimes reading groups can not be so calm in the classroom.
That's right. Bring the Zen space.
Yes.
So until next time, there are rainbows ahead, my friend.
And together, we're unstoppable.